see you is the end and the beginning. You carry me and you go before. You are the journey and the journey's end. Amen. Seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is great to be here. I come down from the Catskill Mountains actually, but I am a creature of the Diocese of Long Island. I was born and raised here, and when Chris and I were downstairs a couple of minutes ago, I was looking at your rogues gallery of former clergy. And John Davis, who was the assistant here from 1945, I think it was, 1945 to 48 or 42 to 45, one or the other, is my brother's godfather. So a little connection. Also, Dean Harold Lemoyne, who I knew years ago. I left the Diocese of Long Island in '89, but grew up on Long Island and came out of this diocese. So it's great to be back. And I'd like to begin by thanking Father Vitae for allowing me to be here with you this morning, and thanking all of you for putting up with me for a couple of moments, and all you who have been kind of walking me through the paces here at St. Joseph's. So it's great to be here. And just stay in tune, so we're in good shape. This morning, so we'll stop after two verses. About a little more than a year ago, I had the opportunity to visit Jamaica for the first time with Food for the Poor. I'd never been to Jamaica. I'd been to Honduras and to Haiti and to El Salvador. And when I arrived in Jamaica, when I think about Jamaica, I think about vacations. I think about blue water, and I think about sandy beaches and big hotels. And as I'm sure as many of you are aware, that's really true on the north side of the island. But the rest of Jamaica really has a tremendous amount of devastating poverty, which I, in my ignorance, was not aware of. I spent my time in and around Kingston for about a week, watching and seeing the ministries that Food for the Poor is involved in and around Kingston and the rest of the island as well, and had the opportunity to, it was the same kind of experience I've had in other countries in Central America and the Caribbean, because you experience a kind of poverty there that you don't really see in the United States. I've always had the same experience when I've seen that kind of really devastating poverty. It's kind of like a punch in the stomach to me, having not seen it before, and it really brings me down. And then I've been in these countries to help build a house normally, something like that. And when I've done that, after you get situated, you get to meet the people and you work with the people building a house. And of course, people are people anywhere you go, whether people are rich or whether they're poor. Once you get to know them, it can be a great joy. And most people in life want the same things. They want a roof over their head, they want a job, they want a school for their children, they want a sense of hope for the future in this life, that something better is coming. So we all share that in common, whether we have more or whether we have less. Having spent that time, it's great. You get to know people, and you have a great time, and then you see the poverty again, and it just brings you down again. So it's always like kind of a roller coaster ride for me when I visited countries in Central America and in the Caribbean. And there are always special moments when I take these trips, normally special people that you meet, right? And in my case, the person I met was a woman named Palomina. I was actually there on a speaker's tour And so we went to visit this young woman. We drove out of Kingston into the countryside, which of course was very lush and beautiful, you know, wound around these roads, and then came out on a little village, which was really not a lot more than a collection of shacks, people living in really extreme poverty. And we pulled up in front of one of these little houses and were escorted into a room in the back, which was a little bedroom. And I would say it was about 12 by 13, something like that. I don't even think there were any windows in it. Kind of these green drab walls. All that was on the floor were 3 old mattresses. And living in this room was Palomina, this young woman Palomina, her 6 children, including her 2 infant twin daughters, her uncle, and her nephew. And Palomina was in this house because her house had burned down. This was actually her parents' house, and she was living in a little room in her parents' house. So we came and were introduced to Palomina, and she was very kind. She told us that they didn't have enough food to eat. She had to cut the formula for her children because she couldn't, for her 2 infants, because she could not afford to buy enough for both of them. And just basically, obviously, you know, homeless in a sense, living with her parents in this one little room. And she was very kind, and she was very polite, and she answered all our questions, you know. But the thing that struck me the most was she had this kind of flat affect on her face. It was almost like no one was home, you know. She answered all our questions, but it was kind of monotone, you know. And we spent a little time with her. We thanked her. We left a little food, as Food for the Poor always does when someone's kind enough to welcome us into their home, and we kind of went on our way. It was a pretty big impact on me. And I spent the rest of the week cruising in and around Kingston, seeing other ministries that Food for the Poor is involved in Jamaica. And one other that I'll mention was going to a place called Jerusalem Home. And a little section of Jerusalem Home is kind of like a pretty big farm, actually, that is a home for children with severe disabilities and with AIDS. And we went to a little subsection of that farm, which was called Martha's House, and met a young girl, had a lot of kids, but the young girl that stood out was this little girl named Deanna, who I'm thinking was maybe about 7. And Deanna's legs were completely crippled up. She had no use of her legs. So she actually walked around on her hands, right? And again, people are people, kids are kids. You know, I mean, we got there, we played some music, we sang some songs. They were all dancing around. Deanna was dancing around their hands. We had a great time. It was fantastic. But for me, in my heart, all I could think of as I watched this little girl was, what would have happened to her if this place had not been there for her? If Jerusalem Home had not been there for her? If she had not found this place where she was given 2 square meals a day, she was given an education, she was given a loving home, and a possibility for the future. If she was on her own, who knows if she would have even survived, right? And yet here she was, filled with joy and dancing with us and singing with us, and it was great. So I really gave thanks for the ministry that allowed her to have this kind of life. And so we spent the rest of the week again driving around. At the end of the week, we found ourselves driving through the countryside again, and we entered this little village again, you know, and we suddenly realized that it looked familiar, and we pull up in front of Palomina's parents' house once more, right? And unbeknownst to us, that in honor of our visit, Food for the Poor had built Palomina a house during the week. Now, the houses that Food for the Poor builds in Jamaica are very simple. They're almost kind of like kits. They're about 450 square feet. They have a couple little bedrooms, little kind of kitchen and dining area, and a little loft for another bed. So they're very simple, very basic, but they're solid, they're clean. They have a solid roof on the house, which is a tremendous commodity for a lot of people in the Caribbean and Central America. They have a lock on the door, which is a phenomenal thing because security is often a great problem in countries like Jamaica. And so, and here was Palomina with her kids out in front of this house. They built it behind her parents' house. And here she was out in front with all her kids, and she was waiting for us, unbeknownst to us, because we were going to welcome her to her new home. We got to got all the fun, right? You got to give her the key and say a prayer of welcome as she entered a new home. But the striking thing was the change in Palomina, right? She had come alive. All of a sudden, her face was animated. She had a huge smile on it, and she was outgoing and just excited. It was just an amazing. It was really a resurrection story. It really was. She had come to life again. Now, all her problems had not been solved. She was still poor. She was still going to have a great struggle ahead of her. But to have the sense of hope that she was able to gain by having a good home was something that really obviously struck her, but struck us as well. Because of the caring gifts of people who supported Food for the Poor, it was possible for this young woman to have a new opportunity in life, a new sense of security, a new sense of the future. And every time I've been involved in building a home with someone, or been involved in seeing something like a home go up for someone like Palomina, it always reminds me or brings me back to the core of the gospel, or at least the core of the gospel as I understand it. And that is Jesus' ministry to the poor, to the disenfranchised, to those who live on the margins of society. Right? Because Jesus came for everybody. There's no question about it. Jesus loves everyone, as all the hymns will tell us, right? But if you look at Jesus' ministry, right, and we see a little glimpse of it, not in the sense of this particularly, but even in today's gospel when Peter, who kind of doesn't get the point, right? Last week he was telling, got it right, said Jesus is the Messiah, and this week when Jesus says the Messiah is going to suffer for the world, he's like, no, right? So Jesus' ministry was the unexpected ministry. He came to suffer for the world. But his ministry in the world was also to the poor and the disenfranchised. This is who Jesus spent his time with, right? People who were on the edge of society, either financially, and actually the vast majority of the population was in poverty back then, but who were on the edge of society because of religious reasons, social reasons, political reasons. This is who Jesus spent the bulk of his time with, right? That's what his ministry was about. And in fact, I'm going to jump out of the Gospel of Matthew, which we've been in this year, and take you to the Gospel of Luke in the 4th chapter, right? When Jesus comes into his home synagogue in Nazareth. Remember that scene, right? And he comes into his home synagogue and he opens the book of the prophet Isaiah. And reads from the prophet Isaiah, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And this occurs in the beginning of Jesus' ministry in the Gospel of Luke, and it's not by accident. It's because this is Jesus' mission statement. This is what Jesus came into the world for. Because the love of God, which Paul talks about in Romans today, right, is to be expressed within the human family. Right? We are called to reach out to those who are most in need. We are called to reach out to those who are on the edge of society, because that's what Jesus did. Now, I know you're not all going, thank God Bruce Torrey has come here to tell us that Jesus cared about the poor, right? I know you all know this, right? This is a part of who we are. This is what we are called to be. We are called to be a light to the poor and to those most in need, both in our immediate area and in the wider world around us, especially we who live in a country like the United States, which has so many resources and the opportunity to share so much. It puts us in a very privileged position in our world. And that's what we are called to be about and to be for. And I'm before you this morning to beg on behalf of an organization and the people it serves that serves the poorest of the poor in 17 different countries in the Caribbean and in Latin America. Food for the Poor is the largest international relief and development organization in the United States and has been serving the poor in the Caribbean and Latin America for over 30 years. 33rd year, 1982, Food for the Poor was founded. And the people who work for and support Food for the Poor are about the business of that core ministry that Jesus had. And I am here this morning to invite you to share in that ministry, to have the opportunity to change a life like Palomina's life was changed. And if you'll take up a brochure that is in your bulletins and open it up, and you can take these home and look through them and see a little bit more about Food for the Poor, where Food for the Poor serves, and how your work through Food for the Poor saves lives. But what I would ask you to do is open to the side with the thick yellow line just to the right of the center, and to look to the left of that, because what always strikes me is how far United States dollars go in poorer parts of the world. Right? For $3,200, for instance, you can build someone a home. $3,200. And in 3 of the countries that Food for the Poor serves, it'll build 2 homes because there are matching programs that do that. So maybe St. Joseph's would like to take on the challenge of building someone a home. Right? Changing a life the way Palomino's life was changed, giving new hope and new life. Or for $205, you can put a water pump in the village. And I'm sure most of you are aware that lack of access to potable water is one of the biggest problems in poor people's lives, right? Because so much disease, and particularly for infants and for older people, disease is so often borne by poor quality water. And then the one that always strikes me so much, for $43.80, you can feed a starving child for a year. $43.80. Costs Food for the Poor 6 cents to deliver a rice and beans meal to a starving child twice a day, 365 days a year, $43.80. You will not, my brothers and sisters, get a better bang for the buck than that anywhere in your life. And so the opportunity there exists and stands. And if you look at that thick yellow line again, and if you pull on either side of it, you'll see this also happens to be a handy envelope. Because if you haven't gotten it yet, my brothers and sisters, I am not just here for your compassion, I am here for your money. Because it is money that changes lives. It is money that gives people new hope and new opportunities in this world. And it's a way that we can stretch our dollars in a way that's unimaginable within our own country to serve the poorest of God's children. So I hope you will make a gift this morning to Food for the Poor. You can do that either by credit card or check or cash, it doesn't matter. But please, if you make a gift, fill out your name and address so we can thank you and give you tax credit for your gift. You can place it in there, you can seal it, you can give it to me on the way out of church or a coffee hour or whatever, and I will see that it gets back to our office. But more than that, I hope you'll consider making a regular gift to Food for the Poor, pledging, if you will. Right? Jesus said the poor will always be with you, and that's part of our ongoing responsibility. My wife and I, every year when we make our family budget, we don't make a family budget. But what we do at the beginning of every year is we make a pledge to our parish so that the work of the gospel goes on, and then we choose the charities, both secular and religious, that we think are doing Christ's work in the world, and we support them every month. Sometimes it's a small amount, sometimes it's a larger amount, but we do it every month as a reminder of our ministry to Christ and to the world, and to be a part of Jesus' core ministry. Because every time we reach out to someone, every time we reach out to someone who is poor or on the margins of society in any way, whether it's political, psychological, spiritual, any way you can imagine, we become the grace of God for that person. And therefore we become Christ for that person for a short moment. And that kind of ends me exactly where I began with grace. So please join me again. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless your parish.